welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our latest round of listener questions. On this episode, we're asking if Mauricio Pochettino will be remembered as a hero or a villain. We're rating Andre Onana, and we're asking why teams keep kicking the ball out of bounds on purpose. Why are they doing that? My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, Mr. Taylor Rocco's here. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan. I don't want to be here today.
Are you kicking this episode out of bounds on purpose?
Exactly. No, it's just that normally I begin with, I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to answer these questions, to which you respond, you're always very excited. You're always very chipper. So I thought I'd go a different direction. Man.
Dark Taylor.
Wow.
I like that.
Even more unbuttoned. Here we go.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy. It's gone TSS After Dark already after a few minutes. Tune into the YouTube, kids, to check that one out. Well, we're glad to have you here, Mr. Rockwell, as we're glad to have Mr. Joe Lowry. Hello, Joe.
Hey guys, Taylor was resolving to be Dark Taylor today. I'm gonna resolve not to kick my camera off of my laptop. So I mean, big steps for me. I'm gonna really make an effort today. No guarantees, but I'll try to avoid rage kickings today overall.
Yeah, it was weird how when your camera fell to the desk, we saw the Diego Luna voodoo doll and all the pins in it at that point. It was an odd one yesterday on that.
Just to maybe this is me being a bit too transparent. It definitely is. I don't know if you guys ever faced this temptation of like work from home. Like, what's my bottom half sort of looking like today?
You Donald ducking?
No, I never do.
Always
for fear out of exactly what happened in the last episode. Of like, what if I have to stand up, or like, what if something happens? So anyway, just wanted to toss that out there. I've resisted that temptation,
and that's why Joe always wears his sweatpants with Juicy across the back. That's his go-to every time.
Well, the odds of me having to turn around, Taylor, are low.
Yeah,
Come on,
exactly.
Very nice. Graham Ruffman, hello. I'm also team always shorts, and not least because I have a puppy now, and it likes to buy every kind of long pant we own.
Yeah, I've got a 6-year-old. She likes to do that as well. So that's why I wear shorts. Yeah. She also has a cage. Is that frowned down upon, or is that?
Despite all her rage, she's still just a kid in a cage. That's what Billy Corgan once sang, I believe.
Oh, I was about to break into that lyric from that song that I definitely have heard before, Ryan. You beat me to it.
Smashing stuff, Graham. Very good. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is the best way
Now I
to
really
support.
don't want to be here.
You don't like Smashing Pumpkins? Come on, everyone loves Smashing
No.
Pumpkins. Oh.
Like
That's my impression of Smashing Pumpkins.
Like the activity of actually smashing pumpkins.
Yeah,
That sounds fun.
Tis the season. That's how they make pumpkin spice lattes. Billy Corgan with a hammer.
Yeah, They smash a pumpkin and then they pour a bunch of sugar into a coffee. That's really how they do it.
There's no
Very
pumpkin in it. It's just
No,
sugar.
there's just sugar. Yeah, exactly.
Element of pumpkin thought goes into it. All right.
Dash of cinnamon.
Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Best way to support us. Bonus episodes, bonus video, and access to our Discord server. Hey, listener, we're trying something out. We're doing something new. Bonus episode coming to this here feed. We're going to start doing a weekend preview and a weekend overview on this here feed starting this very weekend. Do tune in for that. We might even, I don't know, if you're lucky, squeeze in a bonus listener question there. Tune in, find out. Join us on the feed. Good stuff. Let's get to our listener questions for this episode, though, from Mike Zizou. Do you think he's related to the
Yes.
To this guy.
submarine dude?
All right, I thought you meant Zizou the Zidane, not
I was
the
gonna
Wes
say
Anderson.
the fictional Steve Zizou, but the soccer Zizou even better.
Genuinely
Mike,
not sure which of those is more likely for Mike Zizou to be related to. A fictional character or Zinedine Zidane.
cousin of both.
which is a nickname rather than an actual surname.
Nah, it's real.
More importantly. Yeah, you're quite right, Taylor.
No, he
Probably
changed it.
neither. Anyway, Mike says, what are the chances Mauricio Pochettino goes down as an all-time USMNT villain? Taylor, it depends how good the team are, doesn't it?
A little bit. I will give you my answer first. I will say 10% chance, thereabouts. Largely because, do we have an all-time villains list? Like sincerely, I was thinking about it. Like, Giuseppe Rossi was on there for a while, but that, even, like, by modern standards, feels a little bit harsh. Like, how dare you choose a better, generally more successful national team to play for that you identify with? Like, Torsten Frings is maybe on the USMNT all-time villains, and he didn't play for the U.S. Klinsmann, like, I don't think of as being a true villain, even if I didn't enjoy him as a coach. I think, like, there was too much, like, goofiness about him.
He's
Like,
too
I don't
nice, Jurgen, isn't he?
exactly, to be just like a villain. So I think there's a chance, but then I don't think it's like a particularly strong chance, because he would basically need to really obviously not care or not be trying very much, and I do not think that's the case. I think he would have to let petty or personal issues cloud decisions. I also don't think that is the case at present. We'll see. I think he would need to alienate key players, especially ones people love. Maybe there's a little bit
Is
of
this a
that
tick list? I was going to
offer.
say, are we meant to tick?
He's
Done
like
that
at
one,
least
tick.
he's at least like stenciled in a couple of these lightly since he took over. I know there's more time, but I mean,
Right.
this sounds
And-
kind of familiar.
And then I think all of that would then have to culminate in a truly like abysmal show. Because I think just sort of like getting out of the group and then getting knocked out in the first round is sort of like, yeah, I mean, we've seen it before. It's annoying that like he got this much money to kind of do what everyone else has done. But I don't think that makes him a villain. I think it would need to be like, doesn't care, leaves players at home, has obvious feuds with key players, goes into the World Cup, and because of that, they crash out in the group stage. Then maybe he comes across as a villain, especially if he then afterwards kind of talks trash. It is like, I never really liked that gig. They're so far behind the times. I guess maybe part of it depends on how he acts after he is done with this gig.
Yeah. Good shout.
Joe,
Go
the,
Ryan. Sorry.
The Gotham DA, Harvey Dent, famously said, you either die a hero or you live long enough to become a villain, which is why Big Sam is the all-time greatest international manager with his 100% record after one game. What do you think? Do we think he lives long enough to become a villain?
I'll drink to that. Maybe not. So Taylor, you've created a pretty convincing argument. I kind of went the opposite direction and lowered my bar for villain for the reason that you said, which is that we don't really have those. Like Bruce Arena for Cuva is the only other one that came to mind for me on that list. Where, like, dude, what was that lineup for Trinidad and Tobago? Like, what? Honestly, like, what happened there? That is an all-time moment for me, and not a good one for the USMNT. So if we lower the bar and ask ourselves what chance does Poch have to be regarded somewhere on that list, I think it's really high, actually, because forget all the things that Pochettino has done so far, which a lot of them we I think have as a collective have disagreed with. But forget all of that. Throw that out the window. And just think about the perception of Mauricio Pochettino. And Taylor, you kind of spoke to this. They pay U.S. Soccer, pay him a reported $6 million a year to come and coach the U.S. men's national team. He's the most famous coach the U.S. has ever had. It is one of the most famous soccer people on the planet. I do not think this way. Many people think this way. Good coach equals better results. I don't believe that. I think that's a fundamental flaw as to how soccer works. And for that reason, I will not view this way. But if people think you go and hire one of the most famous soccer people on the planet to lead your team, good coaching pedigree, major European clubs, all that stuff. He checks all the boxes. Was the big name that so many people wanted, myself included. If the U.S. end up looking just like they did at the end of the 2022 World Cup, and there's no progress, and yes, he's only had half a cycle, I think there is a 90% chance that people turn on him as a villain for the U.S., just solely based off of his perception, the perception that other people had of him, I should say, coming into his post, and the U.S.'s failure to actually move forward. Now, I think there'll be so many other larger issues as to why that's been the case. Talent not really coming through, which maybe we'll talk about later, who knows. All of the actual things that Pochettino has done are in there somewhere, of course. But it will ultimately be on the players and the U.S. as a nation's inability to produce really good players. But relative to expectation and to hope, I don't think there is. I think there's like a 5% chance that Pochettino meets or exceeds what everybody hoped would happen with this U.S. team and they make a deep run. And I think there is a 90 to 95% chance that they fall at one of the first hurdles and everybody gets really mad about it and blames Pochettino.
I agree, Joe. I think there's a high chance if we're playing percentages here. It's kind of, I mean, the Japan game has stemmed the tides a little bit, thankfully, because there was a bit of progress. It already seemed to have happened before that match of Poch being like made a bit of a villain. And if a World Cup on home soil doesn't go well, then yeah, Poch is going to be a target because he's the $6 million man who was brought in to prevent that from happening. I'm not saying that's like the only way to judge that, but that's the perception. That's the narrative. Like, that's what US Soccer did. Go on, Taylor.
One key distinction I think is worth making. Like, are you all talking about the general fan base, or are you talking about like hardcore listens to every TSS episode about USMNT?
General fan base. Yes.
See,
general perception.
That's where I also disagree. Because I have strangely had 3 different conversations this week with people who are like nominally into soccer, don't really watch that much soccer, but are aware that things aren't great with the U.S. And every single
Keep
one
that
of them
chat private, please, Taylor.
Sorry, right? Well, that's why I didn't say it. You just did it. All right, so now it's 4 because Ryan has outed himself. All of them have been like, oh, so are our players not that good? I thought we were getting better. Do we not have players playing in Europe? Oh, have European teams found out that we're not that good? It's very interesting to me that the focus from like a very small sample size has been about the players and how the team isn't better. None of it, because my response to that has always been like, yeah, well, you hope like the highest paid coach could find a way to make that work. And no one seems to know that. So maybe that becomes more common knowledge as the tournament gets closer. But I think it's still blaming the players seems to be the way most people tend to go.
Wow.
See, my experience, and look, I'm an outsider here, I'm not on the ground like you guys are. When I have spoken to people over here about the US recently, the talking point has always been, wait, did they not hire Pochettino? Were things like not meant to be? And like my mum did it last week, who's got like the most surface level knowledge of soccer, but she does know who Mauricio Pochettino is, and was like, wait, so they're not doing well? So I just think Joe made a key point, or at least I think he made a key point on this.
Oh, thanks, Graham.
Poch is going to be gone. Like if the US, well, either way, even if they have a good tournament, I think this is a one and done for him. But just imagine, like, they get grouped, which, by the way, I don't think it will happen, is a possibility. Like, Qatar landed in a group as a pot 1 team at the last World Cup. I was just checking what their group was. They had the Netherlands, Senegal, Ecuador. That was their group of 4. If the US land in a group like that, and I know the World Cup's been expanded, but nonetheless it could happen, US is kind of in trouble in that group, so it's not impossible that the US could get grouped. If they do, Poch is back in the Premier League in Europe by August, and I just think that's going to play so poorly, and that's going to feed into him being a bit of a villain. Because even with Greg Berhalter, who did, he's kind of on my villain radar in terms of the narrative around him. He's back in MLS now. He's still part of the soccer landscape in America. He can offer some sort of response. Poch won't do that. He'll just move on. He'll never talk about the US national team or American soccer ever again, and I think that'll make it easier for people to make him a villain.
Yeah, Graham, I totally agree. And Taylor just walked away. Your argument was so convincing he had to go do something, presumably cry at how he'd been dismantled. I'll agree with you while he's gone so that he can't rebuttal. That's just classy work on my part. I mean, I don't talk to anybody about the USMNT but you guys, so I don't have I'm not like texting people about it like Taylor. I mean, all of the discourse about the U.S. in the last cycle was about Greg Berhalter. So, like, clearly there are large swaths of people that interpret the USMNT through a coaching lens. And my suspicion is that those people are still around, even if their priors on Pochettino as a good coach who's got a big name and a big pedigree might force them to look elsewhere and maybe look to the players as a flaw. I do think ultimately all across the world, coaches are the figureheads for these kinds of teams, and I try to push back on that. But in this question, if I'm thinking about the all-time narrative for this moving forward, I think the U.S. are most likely to flop at the World Cup relative to where everybody thought they would be after 2022. And so if you need somebody to blame and just want to do it shorthand, Pochettino's the easiest one to blame.
There you go. Maybe he becomes a villain that kind of the Gen Pop loves to hate, like the Hamburglar. We'll see. Time will tell. Mike Zizou, thank you very much indeed for your question there. Why don't we take a quick break? When we come back, we're going to talk about USMNT and the next gen. Join us then. Total Soccer Show. Welcome back to our listener question. Sean O'Reilly has been in touch with this one. Should USMNT fans be worried about the next generation coming up after Pulisic, McKennie, and Adams, etc.? The 2022 failure can be attributed primarily to the lack of talent between the Pulisic and Dempsey generations. Is the same thing happening now? Where are the young stars that should be pushing our current squad the way Pochettino wants? Instead, we're getting middle-aged MLS veterans. Joe, where do we go with Sean's question? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating question. A really, really good one, actually. Just with a couple of, factional / opinion-based critiques on my part. I don't think 2022 is a failure, personally, for the U.S. Losing to the Netherlands in the round of 16 feels just and feels about right for a group that was on the rise at the time. I think it was a perfectly fine tournament for the U.S. I think maybe if we're looking at failures, we're thinking about 2018, and maybe that's just a typo from Sean, where the U.S. don't make that World Cup. Obviously, Kuva mentioned earlier. And at that time, and still to this day, I think people correctly pointed out that you had the Dempseys and you had the Pulisics, and the talent was in the Pulisic generation, and where on earth was the talent between those two groups, right? The lost generation. So I think that is a very real thing, but I don't think it really tied into 2022 all that much, although the U.S. could have benefited from more senior players. It was one of the 2 youngest teams of the tournament. So Sean's not totally off there, but I do quibble with that term failure slightly. And then as far as the most recent rosters, middle-aged MLS veterans, I kind of disagree with that, at least that there have been more of those than younger players in that following generation to the Pulisic generation. Good amount of youth on that roster compared to middle-aged vets. Luna, McGlynn, Freeman, Banks, Downs, and you get the Roldans and the De La Torre. Like, those players are in the roster too, I'm not denying that. But I do think that Pochettino and Berhalter before him were trying to bring in the next generation of players. It just happened for Berhalter that his group was really young and he was feeling some of that effect of the lost generation. now we are seeing Pochettino look for young players who can fit in this next spit. So all of that sort of aside, well, that's kind of a preamble. I do think we are still waiting on that next generation after the maybe 24 to 28 age players in the roster to really step up and to be as good as the players in that 24 to 28 range were at their age. So you think about that 24 to 28 range, I looked all these numbers up. Pulisic, Balogun, Weah, McKennie, Adams, Robinson, Dest, and Richards are all in that age range. So that's kind of the current in prime generation of players. There are 21 to 23 guys who I think are on track to be somewhere in that group. Maybe more towards the bottom than the top, but Malik Tillman's 23, Pepe's 22, Musa's 22, Freeman 21, McGlynn 22, Luna 22, and Brian Gutierrez 22. I'm a goody guy still. I can't quite shake it. And beyond that, there are some really bright U20 prospects right now. Noah Kai Banks, we talked about a bunch. Peyton Miller for the Revs, Xavier Gozo for RSL, Luca Bombino for San Diego, got interest from England. Some good goalkeeper talent as well. Where I do ultimately agree, it seems like with where Sean is coming from, is whether you're looking at that 21 to 23 age range, maybe Pepe and Tillman are kind of the most talented guys in there. I don't think those guys are going to be a Pulisic. I would probably bet against those guys being on McKennie as well. And you look at the U20s, it's a good group. I don't know other than maybe Banks and Miller, and that's a center back and a left back if you're looking at, and maybe Bombino. I don't know that you're looking at any absolute stars in that group either. I think you got to dig even deeper into the youth national team pool and things get even more speculative at that rate. So I do think Sean is seemingly right with where this question is coming from. We are still waiting on the U.S. to create another Pulisic and maybe even another McKennie and a Dest, like players in that tier. And if we're looking for reasons why the U.S. isn't better now and doesn't seem to be on track to get dramatically better in the next 2 or 3 years, that's where I would start.
All right. Taylor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Joe's covered a lot of ground there. I looked in more detail at some of the ages we have in the current group, and I do think Pulisic is 26, Dest 24, Richards 25, Adams 26, McKennie 27. So that's 24 to 27. That's a good group of players. But then if you look at that next age range, let's say it's 18 to 22. Joe named a few there, but you've got Banks, Freeman, Luna, McGlynn, Downs, Scally, Wiley, Musa, and Ricardo Pepi are all 22 years of age or under. If you make it 23, you can throw in Tillman, Johnny, Tessman, and Aiden Morris. So 18 to 23, you still have a good amount of talent, and then I think you have that U20 squad, if you look at it, where there are names that I think are poised to break through, maybe not to the level of a Christian Pulisic, and I think that's where Joe, I hadn't really thought about it like that, and I think Joe does make a point, that we don't have Lamine Yamal breaking through to challenge our already very good players to an even higher level. I think maybe we'll get that soon, but right now that is maybe the thing that we don't have. I think we have plenty of talent still coming through. We have plenty of youngsters, teenagers making their debuts with MLS teams or playing consistent minutes with MLS teams. We have youngsters potentially breaking through in Europe. Who's the defender who plays for Benfica? Josh Winder. Josh Winder would be an example of that, where I feel like he could break through at the age of 20 into the Benfica team this season, next season, and that would be really exciting. But it's probably not to that level where it feels like we have next-level difference makers at every age group.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this recently watching Greece, who have this kid called Karatsas, who you're going to be hearing a lot more about. He's an absolute star. He's going to move to a top club pretty soon. And then I was thinking about... our version of that has been Gannon Doak, and then Mexico's is Gilberto Mora. And I agree, the US don't have that player, and it'd be nice to have that player that you think that kid's going to be our elite level difference maker for the next 10, 15 years. I do wonder if the way that this group sort of came on the scene has changed perceptions of what is normal with a national team, where in 2018, there was a group of young players of Pulisic, McKennie, and Musa obviously then joins a couple of years later. It very much felt and there's your next core ready to go. That's rare in international football that happens. It does tend to be more of a drip effect, where you have 2, 3, or 4 players at any given time that you're thinking, right, those guys can move into the national team in the next few years. So from that point of view, I'm not panicking just yet. Because, as I say, I'm hopeful that the US won't need that entire... You know when you play fives or pickup soccer and at the end of your time there's another team waiting to come on? I'm hopeful the US won't need that sort of generational transition at the end of this cycle. But I do accept that it'd be nice if Kevin Sullivan would just in the next couple of years take a big leap forward and start getting minutes in the Premier League or something. He's probably the closest, right? That you're looking at and thinking he's the sort of generational star potentially. But there's a long way to go for him.
Yeah, I do think by people that know the U.S. youth national teams much better than me, the U17s, where Kevin Sullivan's a part of that squad at the moment even. I think the U17s are regarded quite highly. Mathis Albert at Borussia Dortmund might even be the best player in that class over someone like Sullivan, who's gotten a lot more hype. Julian Hall with the Red Bulls is a really talented young player who I think will be very good. And again, there are good players in that U20 group. I think Miller could be. I think it's possible that he becomes a better player than Jedi Robinson, right? I think it's possible that Noah Kai Banks becomes a better player than Richards. The rest of those guys I named, I'm not sure their ceiling is as high as the players that are in their spots right now at the senior level. But Graham, it's a good point. It's rare to find pure changings of the guard like the U.S. had sort of between 2018 and 2022. That won't happen seemingly for 22 to 26. It's not going to happen from 26 to 30. It will be a slower trickle. But if we're still waiting for players that are, but if we're looking for players as good as Pulisic and even like a Balogun or a Pepe, if we want to dip a little younger, or a McKennie or Adams, we're going to be waiting a little while longer, I think.
All right. Sean O'Reilly, thank you so much for your question. We go now to Stu, who submitted this through the Discord. Discord Stu, if you like.
He does not advertise.
There we go. Famously, not on his rhinestone jackets or anywhere else, Taylor. In an article on The Athletic, Michael Cox highlights the trend of teams to kick the ball out of bounds in the other team's half during the kickoff to gain an advantage. He sees a potential for this to happen in even more scenarios where a team would decide to deliberately kick the ball to gain an offensive advantage. Do you think this could become a problem? And what rule reforms would you support if it did? Graham, this seems to me, this trend that Michael Cox has highlighted, it's part of this trend that I've seen discussed elsewhere about the NFLization of the Premier League, where physicality is kind of more important than anything else in many ways, where dead ball plays are more important than anything else, and now apparently field advantage is becoming more important than possession in certain game states.
Yeah, I read that article by Michael Cox at the time, actually, before this. It kind of went viral on social media. It was.
Don't worry, Joe. You read it on accident, so it's all good.
I don't quite have that skill, Joe. Wish I did. It caught my attention because Michael Cox I know to be very anti-rugby, like I am, and so his tweet or Blue Sky post was like, we need to kick this rugby nonsense out of soccer, which I largely agree with. But I found the article thought-provoking, and I will say that the PSG method of kickoff, that's the team that has popularised this in the last few months. They did this when winning the Champions League, where when they take kickoff, they just boot it into touch up the field. Kind of feels wrong. I understand the logic of it, and it seems to be effective, and I'm sure it feeds into the fear factor if you're playing them. I remember Ousmane Dembele, the camera on him from kickoff, and he's just staring down Inter Milan, going to chase after them from kickoff. That must be terrifying. But there's something in me that says it goes against the grain of what makes soccer so great. Nobody's sending videos in their group chat of a good pressing structure. They're sending videos of overhead kicks and long range bangers and all that good stuff. So it does go against the grain for me. I am not as worried about it as Michael Cox seems to be, because I just think teams will always look to create with the ball, because that's largely how you win games, right? You still need to score a goal. And PSG are, they're the team that are doing this. On the flip side of that, of them kicking the ball out from kickoff, they're also brilliant ball progressors and have incredible rotations in possession. So the best teams are still very good at that stuff, which, as I consider it to be, is the fun stuff. So I'm not overly worried.
Yeah, a couple of things for me. Number one, my U12 team did this. So 1996, we were
pioneers,
putting it right by the corner flag. We would practice. One of our practices when we first started doing it was who can kick the ball closest to the corner flag without putting it out for a goal kick, and whoever did that got to take kickoffs. So
hey Taylor, just real quick, I maybe want to draw a through line from the last question we took about why the U.S. can't develop better soccer players to everything you just said. Actually, let's go through and scrub everything we talked about, and we'll just play that instead. That's great. That's good
first
stuff.
of all, counterpoint. We were the precursors to PSG. Thank you very much.
Oh, my mistake.
Second of all, do you want to know who that coach was or where he was from?
Yeah.
Scotland.
Yeah.
So there you go. It was a Scot who did this to us.
Well, hang on. Did you
make
take the
that
kicks,
argument.
though?
What's that?
Was it you who took the kickoffs?
No, I think I wasn't. I think I took free kicks, though. I, in practice, hit 3 in a row, and I've never hit 3 in a row in my life. And then I took them in a game and did not hit 3 in a row. And that was it for me.
But
no, so
over here.
there is not that full of a trend, I guess, in my mind. It feels like it's a team that some teams are doing with more dedicated emphasis. And I think it kind of only works to a certain extent if teams aren't really prepared for it and are overwhelmed by the kind of aggressiveness of that kick and then the pressing forward. Because if we're talking about the NFLization, the footballization of football, they have this in the NFL where if you're punting, you're trying to pin your opponent in as deep as you can, and oftentimes that could mean like you down the ball at the 1 yard line. It's not then like, well, that's it. We're done. We're conceding a safety, or we're gonna give the ball away. It's sort of like, all right, well, now we just got to be sensible with our plan. And so I think a team that is prepared with a throw-in to either just launch it right back down the field and go long, or have ways to play out of that throw-in, like doesn't necessarily nullify the tactic, but like I think to some extent makes it less effective overall. I think it's similar to what we talked about with Brentford and how efficient they were with their kickoffs and scoring in the first or second minute. I think when teams aren't prepared for it, or when teams aren't expecting it to happen, that's where you can sort of catch them a little bit slack. Maybe it's like, it's a throw in early, I'll just take it. Oh, no, they're pressing us really hard. I think once you're aware it's happening, I think teams themselves will adjust to it. So the only way I would see there needed to be regulation is if there was some sort of like, that was the only thing the team was doing. If it was like, every time we get the ball, we're putting it out for a throw in deep in their end, and then it's just over and over again. Then
you mean like an open play,
to,
not even from kickoff?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay.
If it's just like they do this every single time, no matter what, this is becoming a problem. And I think then maybe their fans wouldn't love it more than any sort of regulatory body.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I just don't think we could ever see that sort of thing happen, because you also need to score goals if you want to win stuff eventually, right? So you can't just boot the ball out of bounds every time. This whole thing is very odd to me. Like, I've enjoyed a lot of Michael Cox's work. I'm not so sure there's like a story in this. I guess what we're talking about, 3.5 times a game where there's a kickoff? No, sorry, 5.5, because you have first half and second half starting, and that happens after goals. It's like half a dozen times a game. I don't know. Soccer's a pretty long game compared to 6 plays. It doesn't really feel like this is going to be a big thing. If high pressing as a concept had never existed, and we hadn't watched RB Leipzig exist and the Red Bulls and all those things exist ever before, yeah, maybe this would be a bit weird and would feel like a bit of a concern. To me, it feels like an extension of high pressing that's now been adopted a little bit by ball-dominant teams, like you said, Graham, where I don't think PSG is ever going to turn into the Red Bulls, or if they do, some other teams will adjust and they'll play different ways to counter that. Because PSG want to play with the ball, ultimately. Like, yes, physicality is increasingly important in the modern game in a different way than it was back in the best decade ever, the 1990s. Things have changed since then. Physicality, though, is very, very important, especially on the defensive end, and field position matters. Teams want control, but I agree with Graham completely. Ultimately, teams will still want to play with the ball, because that's what the best players in the world, at least as far as I can tell, want to do. And even if this continues on kickoffs, which is completely fine, it happens less than 10 times in a game. I just have I cannot imagine a world in which this becomes a problem, but maybe I need to enhance my imagination.
Yeah, it's also not too far removed from, like, do you know what Stirling Albion do from kickoff? Brian, I don't know if you'll relate to this as a lower league fan. It gets laid back to a player, and then they lump it long. And that has been the way for as long as I've been a football fan. So the only difference here is that the best players are accurate enough to actually make something from that and have a throw-in high up, or have an opposition throw-in that they can then press. So it doesn't feel like there's much of a difference to it.
That's it. The classic non-league or even 90s Premier League is put it back to the fullback who pings it into the final third to see what can happen straight away.
Yep.
And I will note that this trend of putting the ball out of bounds towards the other team's corner flag has been done at the top level before in the 1990s. Wimbledon used to do it all the darn time. And the trouble is it wasn't really paired with like a intense high press, so it tended to just be given the ball
It was
back.
paired with 8-9 minutes to go, lads.
Yeah, here we go. It's down there. It's not a problem. But also, it was around a time when there was strong accusations that it might have been betting syndicates who were trying to bet on the ball first time it went out of play, and it being very quick indeed. That's obviously fire truck of lawyers. Cover your ears at this point. But it's something that happened. It was obviously inspired by Taylor's Richmond youth team.
Correct.
A year or two before Wimbledon started doing it in the Premier League. So there you go.
So we inspired Wimbledon?
Uh-huh. And
Checks out.
everything thereafter. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even the tennis a little bit.
Richmond, Graham was excited to learn that Richmond has a strong tennis history, I believe.
I was.
Taylor,
Yeah.
whose team are you on, man?
I know, right? When he started saying nice things about my hometown, I was like, okay, maybe tennis isn't the worst.
What other
Arthur
kind
Ashe,
of
right?
strong
Arthur Ashe
history
from
does
Ashe,
Richmond
baby.
have?
Arthur
Can't
Ashe.
believe that.
Yeah, Richmond's not known for any other kind of history, is it? No?
Nah, not anymore. We solved that. Racism's done. Don't fact check that.
Sweet. Stu, thank you very much for your question. Let's take a quick break, actually, and we'll come back. We'll talk about Andre Onana, and we'll play the What If American Athlete Edition. Tune in to find out what that's about. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. David from Tampa on the Discord. I wonder which part of the country he's from. We'll never find out. Thank you for your question, David. If Andre Onana was actually so comically unfortunate in goal, why was he starting nearly every game for United and not benched sooner? We go now to our Man United.
Have you seen the other guy?
Oh, boy. So, Taylor, is this a case of him not being good enough? Is it a case of he is good, but Manchester United have a tendency to ruin players a little bit? Or is it something else?
Probably all of the above. I think this is a really good question because it's one of the ones where I thought immediately, like, we kind of know the answer to this, right? And then doing some more reading, I think it is a more nuanced thing. And it's a strange one because not long ago, Pep Guardiola himself was calling Andre Onana exceptional for Inter in the UEFA Champions League final. And then there's the move to United for all that money. And now, as the Manchester derby is happening, he will be making his debut for Trabzonspor against Ederson and Fenerbahce. So the two Manchester goalkeepers now playing in Turkey. Wow. Strange days indeed. So why was he still there? A fair question. I think to Graham's point, there were a lack of other options. Bayern there has played plenty of games this season so far and has not exactly showed himself to be the heir apparent. I think there's a little bit of sunk cost fallacy as well. This can't be a failure. We spent so much money, but also if it is, we can't say so because then he's not worth as much and we don't really know what to do with him, which is kind of where they found themselves. But it does.
But with Garnacho, it's absolutely fine. We don't need that guy and we hate him. Why is no one paying $70 million for him?
And Kobe Mainu, we will not accept anything less than 90 2 months later. He's terrible. This like $20 will get him. Yeah, it's great. It's great business by them. It does seem like Amorim, to go back to Onana, wanted to give him basically another opportunity this season, but sort of with the idea like that he's been a problem, but maybe not the problem for this team. And if you come back in and you prove that you're willing to like humble yourself and fight and prove that it should be your spot and you earn it, then it's yours. It sounds like a few things complicated that. Number one, there's a new goalkeeper coach that maybe like did not vibe with Andre Onana. They got along okay, but it seems like some of what he was asking him to do was foreign or less familiar or just didn't kind of put him in the best situation. But then he also shows up to preseason expecting to be the number one. That kind of sours Amorim right there, that he comes in assuming he is the number one. He also picks up an injury. That means he is out for the majority of preseason. And so I think at that point it becomes we are going to move for another goalkeeper, but you're welcome to stay. That seems to have been the reporting, that Manchester United basically were like, you can stick around and continue to fight for your place, but there's no guarantee you're going to get minutes. And then once they do bring in a replacement, I think there was more of a like, okay, you could look for clubs if you want to. And so Onana does that. I think his wages had also been massively decreased after they failed to qualify for the Champions League, massively from like 170,000 a week to 120,000 a week. But I think with the Trabzonspor move, he's making more money. He has a whole foundation and academy back in Cameroon that he funds, so there was kind of a desire to have more money. But ultimately, it's worth remembering that he was, for a while, a good goalkeeper who performed well and statistically did okay and had good distribution. It just seems like the wheels kind of came off the way they sometimes seem to do for Manchester United, / often seem to do for Manchester United more recently.
Yeah, and I was going to get onto that point, Taylor. The thing with Onana, even looking at his Manchester United career, because I think at Inter, he clearly was a top-level goalkeeper. But even with Manchester United, he wasn't all that bad for the entirety of his Manchester United career, despite the narrative. So he was hopeless in the Champions League in his first season, and he made a number of big mistakes in games. I think Manchester United went out in the group, and it was largely because of Onana's mistakes. That kind of established the narrative around him. But in the Premier League that season, Onana was statistically one of the best goalkeepers in the league. He had the third best expected goals prevented number in 23-24. And then even last season, where there was quite a big reversion for him, he was 11th and was still in the positive column. He barely, it was 0.5 prevented, but he wasn't costing, statistically anyway, Manchester United loads of goals last season. So I don't think he was broadly as bad as a lot of people make him out to be, or made it his time out at Manchester United to be. But if you look at the top keepers, the guys I would consider to be difference makers for the best teams, Ederson, Alisson, David Raya, they are all above Onana and certainly more consistent. And I also can't deny the eye test with Onana towards the end of his time at Manchester United, where he just looked shot of confidence. His penalty saving was just like Taylor, you know what I'm talking about. He would just dive out of the way from penalties, which is kind of bizarre. He would also just dive out of the way of shots. So coupling the way his stats were tailing off and also just the eye test, I think it was the right decision for them to get a new goalkeeper in and move him on. But he wasn't as bad as people made out over the course of his time there.
Fair enough. Joe, anything to add?
Yeah, he's just kind of funny, right? I mean, I completely agree with Graham. Like he was so memeable, but and to what you said too, Taylor, he was also not as bad as the memes made him out to be, right? I think that's the balance here. And his track record adds to the whole reason of why you give him a slightly longer leash. But no, I don't have anything to add beyond just like, man, that was fun, wasn't it? Like, if you weren't a Manchester United fan, it was a good time. Remember the one where he's like driving the car, right? Like how he's positioned himself. He's like an F1 driver with how his body landed. No one else seems to remember this. I'll find the meme and send it.
Well,
Very
I mean,
good stuff.
I had it professionally removed, so I can't remember anything.
One of my favourite Onana things was after his first big mistake for Manchester United where he dropped a cross or something, there was a picture of him at the training ground and he dropped his car keys on the ground and he was pictured like trying to pick up his car keys. That was funny. But he kind of reminded me of Fabian Barthez. And my theory with Onana is if you put him in a good team, a lot of his flaws kind of go away and you get the good stuff, the distribution stuff. So, Barthez was in a good Manchester United team and so still won titles, but there's definitely overlap between the two of them.
Gabe, do you remember the one where Barthez tries to trick the striker into thinking he was offside and just stands there with
just
his
stood
hand
like
in the air
that
as the
That was
guy? Yeah. It did not work, it turns out.
He took throw-ins and everything, Barthez.
Barthez ruled, man. It is also, like, I think the point you all are making, there is also just the narrative of it that, like, if Onana is lights out or if United are a good team, a joke about him dropping his keys is less, it's treated less severely, I think, than like he can't even hold on to his own keys. Like, I think there is that line between like Thomas Muller and like, oh, what a hilarious, self-aware player, and if you are in a bad run of form or your team is in a bad run of form, this person is a comical failure that cannot get it together.
Did that work with Barthez when he put his arm in the air to stop Di Canio shooting?
No, Di Canio scored and the goal stood. I think
And
Man
so
United went at the
Ferguson
FA Cup.
lost his mind.
Wow. I was going to say, you put your arm up in front of Di Canio, he might get other ideas of what you're doing.
Yeah, he did. He did briefly stop to do the corresponding salute. Yeah,
there you go. David from Tampa, thank you very much for your question. One more for this episode. Moving swiftly on, Brian Donnelly says, let's play the What If game, American Athlete Edition. Who are some of the guys in America's other big sports league where you think, man, if only they picked soccer as a kid instead? For example, imagine Chris Paul playing central defensive midfield, the toughness, the vision, the poophousery. It'd be amazing. Who are some other guys?
Graham is nodding emphatically. Graham has
I was just
Chris
imagining
Paul thoughts,
that
I think.
person
Hold
that
on.
I've definitely heard of.
I need Ryan and Graham to tell me right now what sport Chris Paul plays.
Yes.
He's the pop star, right? Who went out with Rihanna a while ago.
Okay,
Was that
that's
the
Graham's
right?
guess.
Oh,
Ryan,
boy.
what's your guess?
I think he's
I know who
So domestic abuser from Graham and Ryan. Would you care to try to do better? I
think
don't
he's
see
top
how you
five
could do worse.
at pickleball in the country.
I'm being slightly facetious. I don't know much about him, but Chris Paul is CP3, right? That's
Well
who that is.
Good job,
There we go.
Christian Pulisic.
Don't say yeah, Ryan, like you were
Yeah,
Ryan.
as long as there's no follow-up questions, I know
CP3,
exactly who he
yeah.
is in his full bio. Yes, thank you very
No
much.
one said his sport yet, by the way, but that's cool.
Basketball.
That is very
Nice.
true.
So anyway, Joe, who are some other guys you'd love to see in soccer who didn't choose soccer, such as well-known basketball player Chris Paul?
Well done, proud of you.
You
I
got
love
that
the
Google
Chris.
search in on time. Nicely done.
I didn't even hear
First
any
names,
typing, so it can't
really.
be Ryan. We know Ryan's not that quite of a typer. I do love the. Oh, that was good.
Fingers of lead.
That's the pot calling the kettle black, Graham. Please continue.
I love the Chris Paul shot because where the what if our best athletes played soccer argument falls short is that an optimal soccer athlete is not an optimal NBA athlete or an optimal NFL athlete. And we talked about this a bit during the break, the four of us. Messi is the GOAT, right? He is the greatest of all time in soccer. He would never be able to play a single second of action on even like a high school basketball court or let alone playing in
slander right here. Muggsy Bogues slander. All 5'3" of him, Joe. And that's not at all why we remember him for being the one. Him and Spud Webb are the two short people that
Correct.
were allowed to play basketball.
Spud Webb, sorry. These names are sure.
They keep happening,
Muggsy
Graham.
Bogues and Spud Webb.
Yeah, man.
Oh, Taylor, well done. Good stuff.
Legend.
Messi can't play in the NFL. He can't play in the NBA. So again, optimal NBA or NFL athletes are not optimal soccer athletes. LeBron James is an amazing athlete. Do we see a single notable 6'9" player in soccer history? No, we do not. Like this does not happen. It's not because there aren't tall people in countries where more kids play soccer relative to the total population. That's not the problem. It's that soccer is not really conducive as a sport that needs quick movement and change of direction and really good body control, where actually having a low center of gravity can be very helpful. LeBron James is an amazing athlete. I don't think he is an optimal soccer athlete. But Chris Paul, to go all the way back to where I started with Brian, Chris Paul, I think, is actually a very reasonable soccer height, a very fluid athlete with great body acceleration, a good body control. I think he could have been a good soccer player, maybe. But the pool of athletes that fit into this question, maybe this is exactly what Brian thought I'd say. But I mean, for most people that ask this question, they want you to say LeBron or Michael Jordan or Tyreek Hill or pick the craziest, kind of sort of freak athlete, I guess. I don't know if that's okay to say, but pick the outliers.
The craziest athlete when it comes to Tyreek.
Well done. I did. That was not intentional, but you're right. Yeah. The pool of real answers to this question, based off of everything we know about soccer through our history, is much smaller than I think most people think it is. So anyway, all that preamble aside, I'm doing a lot of preambling this week.
Joe, can I add to your preamble before you
please,
actually
let's
start listing
preamble.
names?
My answer is just a pre-preamble. Yours is just a preamble.
Yeah, there you go. I had the exact same thing. I don't think there is an ideal size or body type necessarily for soccer, but basketball, certainly you got to be tall. Football, I think, does. Hockey, even, I think the average height of a hockey player is 6'1" or 6'2". You got to be bigger and bulkier. Yeah. And I think that big bulkiness doesn't really lend itself to soccer. So I think fundamentally, if you ask that again, the best athletes played soccer, I think they would look and perform in fundamentally different ways. I don't think they would look the same, because I also think so few sports require kicking that watching any elite athlete try to do it makes them look not elite, unless they've played before. But you have that straight leg syndrome where people who are come to soccer later in life have much more stiffness, and there's just a way that they kind of poke at the ball that makes them look a little this is a very foreign concept to you.
It's
and
watching a British person throw a ball. If you've ever seen,
yes,
it's the end. The end of Band of Brothers has a montage of them playing baseball, and it is so very obvious who are the British actors doing American accents, because they're all "I'm a pitcher." It's just yes, that's.
You better not be defaming Sergeant Winters there. Just.
I don't think he's playing. I think he's off to the sides there. But no, there's a few who reveal their Englishness. So, Joe, I'm with you that I think the premise of the question, it's a question we get a lot, and it's an interesting one. But I think I oftentimes just try to cram in athletes without really spending some time on wait, why is this a difficult one for me? And I just don't think of LeBron James being as effective on the soccer pitch, looking the way he does, being as big as he is for basketball purposes, without having to slim down and having come to soccer much younger.
Yeah, I'm taking a back seat on this one largely because if it's not LeBron, or is Tom Brady still playing? No, he's got a new job, which is talking down to the people of Birmingham. But if it's not those two, I'm a little bit lost here. But am I right in thinking there is some overlap between kickers in the NFL and soccer?
Yeah.
There's a couple. I just did a quick Google. A guy called Brandon Aubrey was drafted by Toronto FC and is now, who's he playing
Dallas.
for? The Cowboys. So could it go the other way? Harry Kane. I know that's not really the question. I'm changing the question a little bit here, but Harry Kane has spoken about wanting to be a kicker, or after he's finished playing. Would that be easy? Is that easy enough to translate?
I'm sorry. It's wild to think that this is the grass is always greener, right? I mean, this is just true in life. We get tired of something and want to do something new that challenges ourselves. That's a fundamental principle, I think, of how most people work. Harry Kane is one of the most glamorous jobs on the planet. He's I want to go be the lowest man on the totem pole, the second lowest, the third after the long snapper and the punter. I want to go be the kicker for an NFL. Dude, that is the lamest job in the NFL. I'm sorry.
I mean,
anyway,
first of all, hurtful and
my bad, Taylor.
Towards kickers.
We'll scrub that too.
As a former kicker, how dare you? I mean, I would say Tony Meola tried it and didn't make the Jets, so you're not guaranteed to make it. I think I watched a video not long ago of it was two of LSU's best soccer players and then LSU's kicker all seeing who could kick from further back, and they all end up hitting from 60 yards or whatever. And there is that question of well, why aren't the soccer players doing it? But then if you watch it again, you'll note that the actual kicker does the very set steps because you have a very small amount of time before that kick is getting blocked, whereas the soccer players do a 10-yard run up to nail that thing. And there is that level of difference that kicking does require a bit more rigidity and timing than people might expect. And so it does get a little bit trickier. Yes, Graham, I think though Harry Kane would probably end up being just fine nailing some three-pointers. Yes, Mr. Bailey with the finger in the air.
I was just going to say, there is some kicker overlap in Graham Gano, who I think is at the Giants now. He was at the Panthers for a while. He's from Arbroath. Graham, in Scotland.
Really?
And, yeah.
I've literally never heard of this guy. There's a
Graham
guy in the
Gano.
NFL from Arbroath.
Yeah, and he
Whiffed.
he used to play in the rec league I played in down here. He's very, very, very good at soccer. I'm not saying he's a professional, but like he had the moves, definitely.
What a pull.
It's weird that there was a point when you had to distinguish between like standard kickers and soccer style kickers, because for the longest time it was that straight on toe ball approach to kicking. I'm not sure that was ever the best way to do it. Back to the question. Joe, I think I actually cut you off before you were going to list.
It's okay. You can do yours.
Okay.
I'll do mine last.
Like, I don't know how you watch any of the football from this past weekend and think that Lamar Jackson couldn't play any position in soccer. Lamar Jackson could play genuinely every single position, I think. He's got speed and athleticism to be a wide midfielder or attacker, physicality and size to be a center back or target striker, decision-making and intelligence, obviously, to be a central
Great
midfielder.
pull.
I think the same goes for Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen could be a ball-playing center back who also scores clutch goals. He's America's Sergio Ramos, is Josh Allen. And then I think Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for the Washington franchise, similarly has the athleticism but intelligence to play a number of positions. And I think of him as being slightly smaller in frame. So I think also maybe goes to Joe's point of like the Chris Paul body type probably is a little bit better, though I think Jaden Daniels is still over 6 foot.
And I love the Lamar Jackson shot, Taylor. He's good at baseball as well, right? Lamar Jackson.
He seems to be good at anything.
Yeah, I mean, like he's one of those guys that has multiple sports, and I think there's some studies done that, if you're playing multiple sports as a kid, that makes you a more well-rounded athlete and maybe less prone to injuries and all these things. Lamar Jackson's great. I didn't have any overlap with that, mostly because I only have one current athlete, but I love your list. Allen Iverson's on my list as like a very fluid, kind of silky. I could see him being like a number 6, kind of like Chris Paul, right, in that way. Barry Sanders is on my list.
It's very important. No, I'm negating that because the real truth is that where's Allen Iverson from? He's from Virginia. He's from Hampton Roads.
Oh, sorry.
He's a
Lives
Virginia.
down the street. Goes to the Harris Teeter Bar.
Virginia, Taylor? We're talking about soccer. Anyway, Barry Sanders on my list.
Dare you?
That was a very, very forced, like we're not talking about practice kind of thing. We're not talking about the game. We're talking about practice. It was poor. Let's move on. Barry Sanders.
Can I say a controversial thing about that? You know that Joe, you might not know this, but the Ted Lasso thing where he's like doing that speech.
Yeah.
Like that. Everybody thinks that's like an amazing moment. I have never understood that, because the point with Allen Iverson is like practice is stupid. Why are we talking about practice? Like, we just played a game. I've got other stuff going on. And Ted Lasso's doing it like sincerely, as like, you should practice. Like, who cares about practice? Like, it never made sense to me that they seem to be using it in the opposite context. Maybe that's the point. I don't know. I'm sure the Discord
Get it? You don't like Ted Lasso, all right?
I like Ted Lasso a lot, but that's just one where everybody shares that clip of like, oh, it's crazy that they're doing a version of the AI thing, and it's like, yeah, but like in the opposite way, Like, isn't that meant to be a criticism of Jamie Tart? Like, in that sequence, isn't then like Jamie Tart, Allen Iverson? I don't know.
Hey, Taylor, real quick, counterpoint.
I've forgotten everything about Ted Lasso.
Funny reference. I'm going to finish my list. Barry Sanders as a progressive number 8 just feels so good. I feel so good about that. And Anthony Edwards as an elite aerial center back, he would be Virgil van Dijk.
Goose?
That's super real. What?
Duck?
No? Just me? That's it? All right, cool.
All right.
That's a Top Gun reference for somebody out there, I think.
My list is done. I feel good about it.
Graham, can we bring ourselves into the conversation by perhaps bringing in some American tennis players? Not sports leagues, technically, but Franny TFO, Taylor Fritz, could they fit in somewhere in soccer, maybe? Got the builds for it.
Ben Shelton obviously has the link to soccer through Trinity Rodman. Also, just
That'll
think,
make
like,
him good.
he's arguably... is he the most entertaining? I think he's more entertaining than TFO. So, like, I think he's the most entertaining, maybe men's player on tour at the moment. Like, big forehands, good celebrations, good facial expressions. So, like, if he was a goal-scoring, tricky winger and had that personality, he would be in a million... He's probably already in a million commercials, but if he was a soccer player, he'd be in a million commercials in the US and on billboards in Times Square, and I just think, like, he'd be really popular and everywhere. So, let's get him playing soccer, and I'm sure at the age of like 24, that'll be a good career choice for him. He's not close to winning a Grand Slam or anything on the rise.
There you go. Great. We managed to kill that conversation with the other two by bringing tennis up.
We did it.
We did it. Mission accomplished. Graham Gunnar, by the way, I think not as Scottish as you think. Born there, but I think moved away pretty quickly.
Hey, if we are claiming to have invented the telephone and the television and everything else, then we'll take him as well. What was
You
his name
invented
again?
place kicking as well. Congratulations.
He's another Graham.
Again.
He's a Graham.
We need all the Grahams we can get.
Good stuff. All right, that is our listener questions episode. Thank you very much to everybody who submitted one. If you'd like to do so, totalsoccershow.com/questions or visit our Patreon, patreon.com/totalsoccershow. Hit us up in the Discord with Discord Stu and many others. But for now, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you to Discord Stu, who, again, continues not to advertise.
He does not, indeed.
Nope.
Joe Lowry, thank you very much.
Simpsons? Simpsons.
Simpsons.
Correct.
Nice.
Yeah. Graham Ruffin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
And as another reminder, listener, we have a new show coming to the feed very shortly. Going to be looking at the weekend and a little bit more. Join us for that one. It's going to be great. But for now, bye.